Welcome to ABA on Tap, where our goal is to find the best recipe to brew the smoothest, coldest, and best tasting ABA around. I'm Dan Lowry with Mike Rubio, and join us on our journey as we look back into the ingredients to form the best concoction of ABA on tap. In this podcast, we will talk about the history of the ABA brew, how much to consume to achieve the optimum buzz while not getting too drunk, and the recommended pairings to bring to the table. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and always analyze responsibly.
All right, and welcome back yet again to another installment of ABA on Tap. I am your ever grateful co-host, Mike Rubio, along with Mr. Daniel Lowry. Mr. Dan, how are you, sir?
Doing great. Excited for another podcast. We got the energy with us today. Our guest is bringing all the energy.
Well, and we're glad because we've set up these double headers in the past, and this is actually the first time the double header works.
And I think it's ironic because I think our guest today knows the person that we had before. Maybe studied under this person, so
might have studied under this person.
We'll bring that up. We
Yeah,
also have the fire alarm going off in the back, aka your 4-year-old.
Oh, we might have some live behavioral intervention. Anyway, we're really excited for our next guest. She brings a lot of young, dynamic, professional energy. She's done a whole lot already. She happens to be collaborative treatment, all in one package. We like to kick that word around, and this person actually does it all in one somehow. We'll learn more about that. But ABA on Tap is proud to present Michelle Vences.
Hello.
Hey, welcome.
Hi, I'm happy to be here, you guys.
All right,
Honored.
good. Perfect.
I'm honored.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We know it's a beautiful sunny Sunday where you're at, so you're giving us some of your time. You're a couple hours ahead of us here in California. Again, really, really grateful that you could spend some time with us. So, did you figure out who we had on right before you? You must know the answer to the trivia question. Who was our guest before you, Michelle?
Suzanne?
No.
Close. Wait, are we wrong?
I think this person helped you get through the and pass your test the first time. You might have used her product. Did you use Sidekick ABA? Did you use that?
I did.
Yeah, we had Allison. We had Allison Warren on.
You had Allison
yes.
on there?
Yep.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing. She's amazing. I honestly, because of her and Suzanne and just meeting them alone in this field, because I was very new to ABA, I feel very confident because of them. And it's just very welcoming vibes that they give. For sure.
Well, the seat might still be worn in from her sitting in it. So
we were very impressed with Allison. It was a fantastic conversation. And then, as always, a quick shout out to Suzanne Juswick, our partner here on ABA on Tap. Main reason we get to connect with Michelle today. Main reason Allison was on. She's really helped us develop our guest list for the podcast, and we are very, very grateful. Thank you, Suzanne. And now you're here. So we want to start with the origin story. You've been doing this for a little while, maybe not as long as I have, but you've done a whole lot already. And you're doing a whole bunch of other stuff. You're very prominent. You've got a huge presence on social media. That's where we're at now. Tell us how it all started.
Okay, so let's start when I actually was a nurse assistant. And I went the route of nursing, went into nursing school, but then I was like, this is not for me. But because of my nurse assistant, I ended up working in hospitals. And then I learned about OT. It's like you kind of jump into it. That's the way my life has flown.
Okay.
And then, and, I'm in the hospital, learned about OT and went into OT. And then let me just finish with ABA, but we can go back.
Yeah.
Then after OT, I learned about ABA, and then those barriers of the behaviors that I was having, and I'm like, I need to learn that. I need to learn that. So struggling, I'm gonna learn it. Then I went to ABA, and here I am.
Nice.
But I think, go ahead, ask anything else if you wanna.
So
take it.
yeah, one thing that I'd want to know about is all that foundational learning. So when you talk about nursing, we were talking about my 4-year-old earlier. We spent we spent a little time, in the hospital when she was young. And I remember looking at those nurses there and seeing them do all these procedures to my daughter, which we knew were going to result in crying from this 18-month-old. And yet they were just ever so prepared to take that on. They weren't scared at all. They'd seen it. And I remember thinking to myself, man, what do these people train in? Because if RBTs if parents could learn to approach this with the same certainty, knowing what they're doing and knowing that the smoke alarm is going to go off, it's going to be in your ear. And then what are you going to do after that? That I think that's very important. So you've got that in your background in terms of nursing. I don't know if you did any sort of pediatric nursing, and then you pivoted into OT, which there's a great deal of overlap with and a lot of foundational skills that you can probably draw from that experience that the whole lot of us don't know anything about. So I really want to explore that crossover, because I bet you've got a lot of unique skills that you can lend.
For sure. And I think now it's crazy because I'm like reflecting through my life as you're asking these questions. And I don't think I've ever really considered the nursing, I guess, background too, right? That being in a different environment all across. And I think from there, I've learned even how to understand the body emotionally, the way it represents itself emotionally through pain, those interesting things. And then it jumps into OT, where now I'm learning more of a sensory system. I'm going to try not to even use ABA terms. I want y'all to hear it in the OT perspective. And then we can get into if there really is evidence-based practices, because there is. So with that being said, OT sensory, we did a lot of sensory, a lot of, we work with the vagus nerve, we work with the nervous system, and the way the nervous system communicates and flows within the body. And so I think that is my main understanding in OT. But then I started to feel that there's more. And I guess maybe it is dipping into all those areas that has formed me into the BCBA that I am today. But I feel like ABA presents flexibility for me to do that. OT focuses so much on OT things, and so does nursing. And now ABA is just it's behavior. It's everywhere. I get to use all that. Amazing.
Michelle just called ABA flexible.
Wow.
A lot of people might take issue with that. A lot of individuals out there that we might talk about later. But I like the way you put that. We might say the same thing in the other direction, right? That we look to OT and SLPs as a way to break our perceived inflexibility within ABA procedures. And this is what it's called, having collaborative treatment or transdisciplinary teams, or again, all these beautiful words we kick around and they look really nice on your report. And then actually getting that stuff done is hard, man. And you have a lot of those skills within, one package. So let's explore that a little bit more in terms of, the collaboration. When you talk about a vagus nerve or central nervous system, and then we talk about something like de-escalation, right, which may or may not be an ABA term, there's a lot to put together there, right? So share a little bit with us about what you might use in terms of reaching back into your nursing and OT piece to say, this is something unique that I might do to de-escalate a behavior, for example.
Honestly, that is my favorite part about this conversation. So one, we have to think about the way, trauma. Okay, we don't even know the trauma that someone has experienced, right? And so when we start to think about the way the nervous system fires up, our bodies sometimes get adjusted to overreacting to some type of fear or experience that they're currently having. And so what happens to our body, our heart rate starts to go up, shaking, and it's hard to make decisions. And so imagine approaching a child that way. You're like, use your coping skills. And they're just like, no.
If I could, I would.
Crying is my coping skill.
Yeah. And I'm like, look, let's just remove everything, right? The nervous system's firing up.
Yeah.
Let's turn the lights off, stop talking. Okay. Just you calm down. And not just that, think about it too. their nervous system is high and up. Mine is too. The RBTs is too. You know, we're all kind of like, how are we going to go? You know, what's next? But then imagine when the lights start to turn off and our voices start to calm down, it starts to just shift the environment around for them. And then you start to see them start to de-escalate. That is our number one thing before we get to anything else. I understand there's plans in place. I understand there's these strategies. But at the end of the day, let's like calm that nervous system down. And I've done it. Like I should do research on this. Sometimes I'm like, maybe I should do like something so I can prove that my way of doing it has de-escalated situations so many times.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but sometimes my ABA, I'm new in ABA, y'all. So it's hard to bring in strategies when I'm still trying to like process everything else, right?
Yep.
And then, so
but you are a certified BCBA, so I want to make sure that people understand that we're talking to a credible person. We're not talking to somebody talking some pseudoscience.
You've passed
here.
the test.
You passed the test,
and we're going to talk about how you did that a little bit later because you've got some things to share about that. And then I appreciate that you're trying to stay away from what we would call the technology. I like the thesaurus speak. I like to be able to say, oh, you just said that in ABA we say it this way, or in ABA we say it this way. And I love reaching into my developmental background and going, this is the same concept. We're just using different words, and let's use that to correlate and to collaborate. So please do continue to use terminology from your experience, and we'll feel free to pepper in the ABA tech where appropriate. I think this is a really good way to start this conversation.
Yeah, and like you said too, I work for a company called Proact. Have you heard of Proact training by chance?
No.
Have you heard of CPI by chance?
No.
Okay. It's like a crisis de-escalation company, but we talk about, fight or flight. And when people go into fight or flight, blood is leaving your prefrontal cortex and your brain and going into your extremities. So that's basically what you talked about in more layman's terms. Like when people are escalating, they're going into a level of fight or flight. Physiologically, their blood is leaving their brain. So I like to think about it like a computer wheel that's spinning. Like you can add as many programs as you want. You can add as many coping strategies as you want. That computer's not taking any more input right now. So like you're saying, if we can de-escalate that vagus nerve, if we can start to get blood back into that prefrontal cortex, then their brain will come online and work. But until then, we're just adding programs to something that's already overworked.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. I love it. Please I've never thought about it in that perspective. And you know what's interesting? The way we're all using different ways of this understanding is how I taught myself to understand ABA, is listening to it in different perspectives, just like that. Just like that. And then all of a sudden it made it so much easier. Sorry, I just went into it like, honestly, that is how I now teach it. It's like, hey, don't just listen to what I have to say. Go look at, I love ABA exam reviews. They're amazing. That's how I passed my test. Go to his YouTube, go look at his perspective on the topic that we just talked about. And the beautiful language of the way I explain things, the way you have explained things, beautiful. Makes so much sense. Much sense.
You mentioned the word trauma, and I think that people can get, and I want to reference what you were just talking about too, Dan. I think people can get a little lost in that, right? So all of a sudden you're thinking trauma, you're thinking some sort of, and it could be referring to some sort of historical abuse, but more importantly, something that has triggered that sympathetic response continually. And whether that's because of an external stimulus or because that's also part of somebody's temperament, or there's so many pieces that come into this that we can overlook immediately because of some diagnostic label. Well, this is the autism. Well, what does that really mean? So I think it's really, what you're saying is really important, that we have to piece this apart. And then what, both you and Dan were saying is that until you can get back down to this baseline, to use that word loosely, there's really not much else you can do. So a lot of times when, RBTs are going to have a behavior during a session, and that's going to give them their perception of, wow, this was a terrible session. Well, in fact, that's a great opportunity to do what it is we do, because that's why we're here, that behavior right there. So it really just reminds me of how fortunate we are to be able to work in the field we work in, to be able to help people with these things, whether it's the child who's expressing some semblance of that trauma, to use that word, and then in many ways, as important, the parent who's trying to learn how to deal with it, and to have somebody with youthful energy and a lot of content expertise already to come in, like yourself, Michelle, to help these people, that's exciting. That's an exciting prospect for ABA.
Absolutely. And with trauma too, like that literally rewires and reworks brain structure. So it can create larger amygdalas and things like that. So it can make people more predisposed to go into that fight or flight.
Brain plasticity is actually what got me into ABA. So the idea that what we do literally helps rewire the brain. That's, I was in brain imaging research when I had just finished my master's program. I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I got a job with an ABA company. And I was like, brain plasticity in real life. Look at this. And the rest is history.
So before you became a BCBA?
Much like you, I didn't have some clear plan, but everything I've done somehow, has worked in my advantage. So I was a developmental psychologist, or did developmental and human development through my undergrad and graduate experiences. So, learned a lot about best practices in early childhood education, and then went and learned about brain development in terms of language acquisition, and that's where this autism thing came in. And I had been exposed early on in my career to behaviorally to this idea of kids with autism versus neurotypical kids, and in these idyllic child development settings, how that played out, and the differences in seeing all these kids engaging with the environment, and then seeing that one kid is like, wow, what are they doing? This is like late 90s, right? I'm dating myself here. This is a long time ago. When the word autism wasn't even that common. And then, I did a master's program with brain imaging research, fMRI, and language development, and looking at different aspects of language development as they might then relate to now an autistic individual. And somehow found a job with an ABA company, and it was like, I love this. I'm going to have to do this certification. So I never planned on ABA, and somehow landed on it, and everything that I had done before, fortunately for me, fit the bill. So.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you on the OT side of things, since we're kind of going down that train first. I've done trainings at my companies the last 15 years, and I've created both RBT and parent trainings. And one of the last weeks in the parent training, and sometimes I would include it in the RBT training after the fact, was like a kind of like a layman's, a really truncated down version of an OT training. And I'm curious, coming from a professional like yourself, your thoughts on it. We will talk about tactile proprioception and vestibular, and maybe, the benefits of decreasing an individual's tactile defensiveness, or using some weighted vest or things like that for proprioceptive skills, or some jumping or things like that for vestibular input. Is that, I don't want to say is that still relevant, but thoughts on that? Is that still something that's actively practiced by OTs? And was I talking about the right stuff, or was I out in like la la land?
Yeah, no, that is honestly great, because I feel like sometimes people don't think about probe and vestib as well. So for you to just say that, you're on the right track, 100%. I think stick to that, but also maybe do some research in reflexes and how some kids don't end up fully integrating those reflexes. And that really does affect them a lot, especially let's think about palmar grasp, right? Babies are born like this with that palmar grasp. And then the more they engage in weight bearing, the more that ability of the reflexes start to relax, right? But guess what? Sometimes children on the spectrum do not engage in a lot of those gross motor activities, because there's been a lot of data too stating, or research stating about the core and how they have that core weak muscle, and then those reflexes don't get fully integrated. And so you can see them always holding something, or, you can see them. Just start observing that a little bit more, and you're going to see it more often. And I also do integrate a lot of those, that side of OT with sensory as well. I feel like there's more though.
Yeah, just
more.
And I love this. We're going to go on this train. I know you've got something, but really quickly, because people talk sensory, and we've boiled it down in many ways. And I'm not saying everybody has, and I'm going to be a little bit facetious, right? But you're going to have sensory. So you got sensory play. You've got the rice and beans bin. We've boiled it down to these super basic things. And I'm not making fun of those things, because those things can be super valuable. But what you just talked about is a whole different ball of wax in terms of explaining, why is this kid always carrying those objects, or these things that we think are fixations? Well, now because they're exercising their palmar grasp. That's it. I mean, you just gave a whole different angle on something that could be seen as diagnostically relevant or fixed behavior, and I'm not saying that those labels don't apply, but when you take the perspective of this is developmentally typical, we just have to get that kid to open their hand up. Now, behaviorally and bear some weight on it to pick themselves up. And then again, I'm probably oversimplifying, but man, that's a whole new ball of wax there, behaviorally speaking. Now we're not talking about some behavior for reduction, or we're actually talking about the replacement behavior, which is open that hand up and get them to bear some weight on it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And it's funny because my fiance, she's OT as well. And we always are like, our conversations are amazing, okay? Because she's learning ABA over here. And I'm still like, give me more OT because you're still practicing. I want to know more. And then we just work. I'm not going to lie. I work on the body as a whole. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that language develop so beautiful because we're integrating these things. We're moving the body. These muscles are stronger. I mean, we can go down the line of how it supports them overall. And I'm sure there's more. But I mean, so far it's looking good.
I'm working with, I love early intervention, especially pre-diagnostic early intervention. And what you just mentioned really resonates with me in terms of just thinking about, again, I've been doing this a long time. So the idea of intervention has to look a certain way. And now the child has to be seated and engaged. And what you just talked about is something that I love seeing all the time. Seeing some 2-year-old and you know, whether it's the funding source or the advocate or the parent saying, yeah, I really want them to learn to sit down and engage. And I'm like, yeah, that kid needs to climb and run and fall and trip and spin and roll before a million times before we have any chance of getting him to actually sit down and engage in a meaningful way. And that's difficult for people to bear with sometimes. It's like, well, no, you're just trying to go with him and it's because you don't want to make him cry. Well, yeah, I don't want to make him cry because that's not what he wants to do right now. But guess what? I can still throw out those targets that you think are going to happen better when they're sitting as he's climbing. Don't worry. I can still talk to him. I can still show him things. It's okay. And I really appreciate the way you're putting that forth. Because we do have this very traditional, semblance of ABA and what it's supposed to look like, and you're turning that on its head, and I like that.
Yeah. Sorry. Can I? Sorry.
No apologies. Go.
I was so ready.
Go.
So I'm glad you said that. Thank you. Because when I went through my program, I feel like OT is the example of what like not to do. And ABA. And I'm like, yo, why y'all hating on that so much? Like I would every semester that started, I would put on that chat, I practice OT. So y'all know that
catch me outside. How about that? Catch me at the OT gym. So question for you. You made me think about it with the hand piece.
I lost you. I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear us? Can you hear me?
Oh, are we back?
Hold on. Is it my connection?
It might be. We can hear you still.
Can you hear me?
Yes. We can.
Okay, we're back.
You can hear us?
Back. Okay. Yeah, and just let us know. No worry. We
it was our connection. Actually,
we don't edit or record. It was. We record live, but we roll with the punches. So no worry. Anyway, Dan, back to you. Sir.
I had a question for you. It made me think about it because that I never thought about the reflexes piece. Does that have any relevance to a lot of the kids we work with? Palm writing, like they grasp instead of pincer grasping like that.
Yeah. So 100%. And you know what? I've even met OTs that don't really know about reflex stuff because that's like extra. That's the CEUs you have to take. They don't really teach you that in school. And so I've seen OTs that are still trying to get these kids to sit down on the chair and start writing. And then I'm like, roll them over a ball and let them weight bear. Like get them to do, like you said, climbing trees, falling, all that good stuff. And then you're going to notice a difference after that. All the way.
I love that. That's so I think two things. One of the reasons that ABA historically maybe hates on OT is one, because the kids, when they're doing OT, just look like they're having so much more fun. Like if you look at OT, look at the energy they bring versus a typical ABA practitioner. But also, I think we can also run the risk, if not being done proactively or be done correctly, looking like we're reinforcing the behavior. And what I would see that happen a lot, like, I don't know, maybe a child at school doesn't want to do their homework, and the teacher's presenting the homework, and the child's not doing it, and then the OT comes in and they're like, well, you know what, they just need a break and they need squishes. So they get the negative reinforcement of not having to do the homework and the positive reinforcement of the squishes. And then now every time homework's presented, they look overstimulated, so they can get the, the break and the squishes. So do you have any thoughts on that, kind of integrating them to make a happy medium?
Yeah, I guess it would be the other way around, wouldn't it? Wouldn't I have to teach the OT about ABA? Because I feel like the OT side, I feel like we got it. We learned that. It's more of like the OT maybe needs to learn when that behavior is occurring, or just to tap in a little bit, understand what's happening. So I would say it would be the other way around, because like I know the OT perspective and I know ABA, so now I use it to that advantage. Now I'm just kind of like, okay, I don't want to reinforce certain behaviors, things like that. So I start to kind of plan it out. But
that makes more sense.
What you just mentioned reminds me, and we can go into this. I haven't talked about this in a while or thought about this, but the whole notion of sensory diets, which I know are very popular in school-based settings, and the behavioral premise that those are all diets that's supposed to be preemptive in a sense, or antecedent-based. And one of the big issues that teachers would have is this child's not misbehaving, and the OT comes in and gives them a massage, right? And it's like, well, what's that doing? And they're just getting rewarded for it. So I don't know if you can speak to that, but that's what you made me think of as you were talking about that. There's a lot of nuance to decipher. That's where the collaborative treatment has to come in. If somebody doesn't understand what you're doing, or each party doesn't understand what the other's objective is, you're going to miss, and you're probably going to end up implementing something in a way that renders it ineffective.
Yeah. So for sensory diets, it's not so much that, well, this is the way I think about it. It's not so much that we could follow, like we're not really following a certain schedule, I guess you can say.
There you go.
I think it's just finding more of when these could be implemented, which would be when one, not reinforcing the behavior we don't want, but maybe doing it when we do want to reinforce, I guess you could say, an instant that we do want, and engage them in this sensory diet, still receiving what they need to, because it's still part of the body. I mean, why do you think sometimes they're considered dysregulated or, not attending? It's because they're also not regulated either. So it's both. So why not, I guess, reinforce when there is a behavior using those strategies of OT, like getting them to weight bear or bounce on the ball real quick and things like that. So yeah, it is about collaboration at the end of the day, honestly.
And you even took that a step further in the sense that now Allison was using this phrase a lot in our previous interview and saying, look at the person in front of you. So it's not a set schedule. It could be a set schedule in theory. And then you're going to have to look at the learner. You're going to have to be looking at that child to decide when is the right time to put this diet forth. I mean, that now starts making a whole lot of sense. That is the essence of collaborative treatment.
Sure.
This is what I think we can do. This is when we should do it. Oh, wait a minute. Don't do it then. I didn't mean then. Or that doesn't fit into your rubric or your plan, whatever that is. And that can be very difficult. But the way you just broke that down makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I think, too, in ABA, so I do want to talk about how you feel like OTs might benefit from ABA training, which I agree wholeheartedly. I'm going to hold that for a second, though. In ABA, we really do look at how to access reinforcement, right? And I could sit there with somebody who doesn't want to use a pincer grasp and try to model and fight them not wanting to use a pincer grasp to get them to release their palm, or we could roll them on a ball and have them naturally open up their palm, and boom, they can access reinforcement much more quickly. So it's not violating any principles. In fact, it's probably getting to point B way faster than just trying to do extinction, or now the person doesn't want to open their palm, so I'm going to ignore them until they open their palm. And it definitely does seem like a more innovative and integrative way of doing that.
Let me add something to that really quickly, and then we'll let you loose, Michelle. The idea that now you can still have a child scribble up, down, and around with their palmar grasp and not worry about correcting them toward their pincer or their tripod grasp, if you will, and that's okay. But if we focus too much on our data or the way we've done our design, well, I'm expecting them to use the appropriate grip, so now that's a failed trial. Well, no, there's a lot of success in the fact that there's just scribbling happening, because that's still working on something as you then get them to open up their hand toward that tripod grip. Now that's a task analysis, right? That's a task analysis right there.
Yeah. So, and then also think about it like this too. If we can reinforce a behavior, the quicker, the better. So if you're going to be like, you know what, one way I want him to work towards a pincer grasp goal is for him to weight bear. Like that can be how you track it, I guess, maybe. How long can you weight bear for that, right? And then imagine as you're going over, then they're about to receive reinforcement. They're going to open hand reinforcement at the same time. Then you can say, oh, we're still meeting that goal towards that pincer grasp because he's weight bearing, muscles are opening up. This is why OT is cool too, because we can make goals like that, right? So much easier. But that's the way I would do it. I would actually use reinforcement and ABA strategies in OT before I even knew what ABA was. And I'm like, no wonder they liked me. I was like reinforcement right away. Like that makes so much sense.
Making it fun. I always said that. Like it was so cool instead of having in fine motor, ABA strategies, touch this and touch that. Like an OT would have somebody scooter board, like pick up a puzzle piece. Now scooter board to the other side, put it in the puzzle, and it would really make it more of a vibrant. You're still hitting the same target, but you're doing it in so much more of a functional and vibrant and energetic way that the person's probably gonna pick up the skill without even knowing that they're picking up the skill. I think that's one of the things with ABA is we almost feel like that's the only skill we can work on at that one time. We have to work on that one fine motor skill, and we have to solely target on that. And maybe we even have to let them know they're going to work on it because they can't acquire it if they don't know they're going to work on it.
I mean, it's one of my favorite conversations as of late is looking at how those goals or targets are embedded within programming, right? So like the idea that you might be working on the cognitive skill and matching in an inset puzzle, but you're also working on fine motor if they're grabbing it this way. And the idea that if you play with the pieces and twirl them around and flip them over without working on the matching, that's all fine motor toward completing that matching task, which we otherwise put as cognitive. And I mean, they all work together. And I think that's, to your point, Dan, one of the troubles we've had in ABA is almost being too good at our task analysis, that we break it down into these tiny little Legos that don't build into anything afterwards, right? They're just these isolated little pieces. But that's where you come in. So you were making me think about things you probably have. We'll put you on the hot seat here for a second. But like utensil use could be something that people conceptualize. You do your behavior scale or your assessment, and it comes up short, and that's a deficit. They need to use utensils, and then everybody, of course, thinks, well, that means that we have to do something during session that means eating. And now the child also has maybe some eating issues, so now you're stuck in trying to practice this utensil use, knowing that you're facing a situation that the child's not going to be comfortable in already. In enters Michelle and says, do all these things too. Talk to us. What else would you recommend?
Okay, well, one, do they use utensils for eating?
That's a great question because I love that you just brought that up. We are so huge on finger foods these days that it almost renders utensils pretty useless until you're about 5 or 6.
Question on the Vineland, Mike. It doesn't matter whether they use it.
It doesn't matter.
Question on the Vineland.
These assessments, though, are not, they don't support different cultures either,
There you go. I feel like that's the stuff I want you to talk about.
For our exam. It's so important for our exam, too, to be able to pass is understanding how we can adapt these assessments. That's why I always ask, first of all, do they use utensils at home? That's the first thing I will ask, because if they do not, then our plan could still be how do we still develop that, but in a different way. We don't have to use utensils to practice that. We can use a shovel and dirt and learn how to play with dirt, and then they're sensory, then you start to see everything else come into it, and it's awesome. Yeah, for sure.
Wait a minute. Dirt can be sensory? Are you sure?
Only if it's in the sensory room.
Only if it's in the sensory bin in the sensory room. Is that
correct?
Yeah. Again, I love your example, and I that's what we were after here. There's so many other things we can get overly linear, almost too direct to the point. We're too good and too precise sometimes. And you're talking about the overarching systems from, in terms of muscle and fine motor, gross motor coordination perspective, and there's so much to encompass there. It's amazing.
So I have a question for you, based on something Mike's been telling me for a while. So I got to see if it's snake oil from this from an actual OT. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the things you've talked about with stimming is that as we progress and we get older, we actually learn to regulate our nervous system a little bit better. So as we're kids, we're moving all over the place, and then it's not that we're learning to stim, it's actually we're learning to regulate ourselves a little bit better. So do you have any thoughts on that? And do you have any thoughts on that regarding individuals that we work with a lot of times with ASD stimming more frequently?
Well, I think I think I still stim.
Oh, we all do, for sure.
Yeah. I think we just learn, honestly, I wonder if just I don't know, maybe everything I've experienced, right? Maybe my behavior was in a way molded this way where I had to hide my stimming maybe-ish. Ooh. I think, especially being ADHD like me and my children, I feel like, I'm stimming right now. I'm flipping and flopping things right now. Like, I cannot stay still. And I bring that and I adapt to that, right? But it's not obvious where I'm like this, but I'm not going to lie. I have done that before. And it's when it's like I'm receiving this feeling of happiness where you start to see it again. And I think it's just a normal thing that our body does daily to start to regulate.
Yeah.
I think just the way our body just starts to, how can I receive this stimulation? Because we're all like this, even adults. How do I receive my daily stimulation to help me regulate this system? How do I go up? How do I go down? And as adults, I feel like we kind of figure that out. I sleep in a little extra if I need to. I already understand that. And children are still learning that. And I also think we should just let them stim freely. Let it continue if that's the way they want to. Like, let's not alter that. Like, we don't have to replace that. Yeah. I think that's
absolutely. No, that makes total sense. Yeah. I think there was, historically sometimes in ABA we look at behavior for reduction, and then stimming ends up on that, and maybe because parents thought it was socially stigmatizing, or it was kind of a trait of autism. I know that most of you are listening and not looking, so you'll see I'm putting quotes. And then parents wanted to avoid their child looking quote unquote autistic. Right. So they're like, we don't want the stimming. But I think the prevailing kind of methodology is what you said now, is if it's not hurting anybody, then who cares whether you're doing it? My girlfriend drives me absolutely crazy because she's always fidgeting with stuff. And I'm just like, can you just sit still for 1 second? But she's clearly a functioning adult, and she's able to turn it on and turn it off when she needs to. And I think we all do that to some extent. We all stim. Sometimes I'll take a paper clip or whatever. And it does, as long as I'm able to focus on a task. And I think that's potentially the difference is if I'm fully encompassed in the stimming and I'm in my own world and I'm not now receptive to the stimuli outside of my stimming, like I'm just staring at my hands. And again, that could be totally appropriate. And who am I to tell when it's appropriate or when it's not? But presumably if I'm in school and I'm doing that could be an issue. But if I'm just like snapping my fingers or something, who cares?
Yeah. Sorry, I was
No, go ahead.
So also let's talk about a little bit of that too, compared to ADHD, because they do a lot of that too. If there is a way to reduce it, I feel, if we were to engage in very, very heavy, active things, maybe working out. You know how they say working out is good for you and movement's good for you. And I do that with my son. My son needs a lot of that. If not, I do get the really bouncy, stimmy, kid. And it's like I start to notice his body, receiving all that and doing all that movement. Sorry, I'm like losing my train of thought. This is my ADHD. And so then I get him to do a lot of hard work, and then all of a sudden you start to notice less of that fidgeting, less of that movement. So it's also a lot of that. Like, there is a way to reduce it, because I also feel like it can distract us. It can, not allow, sometimes it, like I said, distract us. So it's harder to learn and sit still and attend and things like that. So I feel like there is also a way to reduce it. I'm just saying, like, also not replace it. We don't have to replace it. They can still continue to stim the way they want to, but maybe showing them how to reduce that, because being wiggly is it's not my favorite. I try to get rid of it too every day. It's an everyday thing for sure.
Yeah. For yourself?
Yeah, for myself, for my children as well. So I think as we get older, we don't require it as much. But okay, how detailed can I go in here? Is it like PG-13? Is it 18? Can I go?
We can do. We can go wherever you like. Yep.
This is your podcast.
Okay?
We're good. Yeah. You. If we I'm forgetting. Liat was. We haven't had her on yet, but we've been waiting to mark the explicit box on the.
Okay.
You know.
Okay, cool.
So if you're the first one.
Okay, cool. So, okay, think about it like this. The way we receive our proprioceptive input, which we should daily, would probably be what? Having sex. Having sex gives us all that vestibular too, because vestibular is when you that little liquid in your ear and, stabilization. And so the movement, right? Woo! All that vestibular stuff. So you see how we receive all that type of sensory input. Yeah. So as adults, we can engage that way. But if you're not, guess what? You're then lacking a lot of that. So then you got to go to the gym. You got to find ways to relieve all that, because I feel like I said, it's a day-to-day thing that we have to do, and with our jobs, I mean, I'm busy. I work 7 days a week. Like, I don't even have time to do sometimes any physical work at all. And so here I am all tensed up. I'm like, I got to relieve this, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think we ever lose that. I feel like we still, it's like, I don't know, it's a weird thing. I nerd out and I'm like, what is it? Please tell me, like, is it the muscle that needs it? What is it? Like, I want to dive deep in that.
Well, it's probably it's probably several multivariate, right? I mean, so with the example you gave, we're now going into neurotransmission and effects of emotion and intimacy. I mean, right, we could go on and on. What I'm really gathering from this is that behaviorally, we might look at a hyperkinetic kid who's moving around a lot, and our first target is to make that stop. What you're saying is, turn the volume up on that. This is where we get into the deprivation satiety piece. And then once you turn the volume up on that, you might have a chance at having that child engage in something else that isn't their then preferred mode of operation. If it's hyperkinetic, you might then have a chance, having given them all those opportunities to engage in that. And then maybe, I'm going to go a little further here, make some overgeneralizations, but when you were talking, you made me think of this whole notion of masking. It's seen as largely negative. We all do it to our social advantage. But the only chance to actually get there and mask something comfortably would be to understand the difference between you and the rest of your external environment, how your actions are affecting that external environment, some feedback from that environment to allow you to understand that what your effect is on it, and then some conscious decision to say, I'm going to stop this for a little bit and wait till I get home to continue, or screw them, I'm going to keep doing this. That's a lot. So, somewhere in there's this notion of masking, which could be adaptive, but to actually get there, I think we have to cross all these other barriers. I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You gave me this crazy perspective of the way we shoot out itch back in. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. It's cool to see it in again, another perspective, because I start to kind of understand what you mean. So real quick, what was the question though? What do you want me to answer?
Well, no, I mean, I was just having you comment on that, right? So you're, again, the idea that a child's hyperkinetic. So then behaviorally would say, well, they have to stop climbing. That becomes the goal. You would say, no.
Yes. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yes. So, and then they're like, well, sometimes when I engage them in those types of activities, they get even more hyper, right? I know we've heard that before, right?
Okay. Yep.
But I'm like, well, then means we did not give enough. Because we got to go up until we find what that baseline is, y'all. We haven't found it until we see that crash come down.
Yeah.
Then we know where that baseline is. Okay. And so, and sometimes it could be, oh my gosh, with my son, it was like, he can go, oh my gosh, one time. Okay. Let me give you an example. We hiked for almost 4 hours one time. Hot. We ran out of water. It was scary. Okay. We're alive. So I was cooked. We went to some restaurant, and then they had a playground. And I'm like, no, I don't think these kids are going to play. Like, I'm exhausted. I just need to eat. I need to drink, No, these kids played till almost 10 p.m. And he slept so beautiful, regulated perfectly the next day. He was chill, attending, engaging, not wanting Xbox. Like, oh my gosh, beautiful. Wow. But I can't do that every day.
Every day, right?
That hurt,
We've got a puppy. We did the same thing. We took him for a 10-mile hike, and he was great. And normally he's all over the place.
Yeah. So yeah, give it until we find that. But you can, okay, let's say this though. Sometimes, okay, not sometimes, but also if we involve all of the senses, we might get there faster than just using one. So the hiking is more of a probe, a little bit vistive. But then what about if we hike and we spin and we receive, vibration? Because there's a lot of vibrating tools that my kids like. And then maybe some calm scents, calming music on the ride home. It's like that's kind of like a sensory diet. You're including these pieces of that input all around. So then we don't require just one, just prop alone. And I haven't tested it out. I haven't tested it out fully. But if I have the time, right, to remember to put the nice music on, to remember to turn on the nice candle, to remember, it's like you have to track all that data and make sure you're pushing through with it. But I don't got the time. But I bet you, it will work.
You mentioned spinning. It's one of my favorite behaviors in this discussion because it fits right into this idea of stereotypy, and parents want to stop it. And then if you look at spinning developmentally, it is so important, right? So give me some more suggestions here. So I would want you to add to my repertoire. But what I tell parents is spin with them. Count the number of spins before you then touch their shoulder. Give them something to look at. Give them something to hold, like a streamer that goes around while they spin. Can you pretend to be airplanes or helicopters? If you want to add to that list, but I really appreciate that you mentioned that because. And then something else you mentioned with your own experience with your son in saying, I can't always do this. I can't. But it means then that I have to do it as often, as frequently, and as long as I can when I can, knowing that when I achieve that, then I'm going to see these grand results. And if I can't reach it, it doesn't mean I don't do it. It means I do as much as I can on any given day.
Yes. So let me comment on that first. That is exactly what I do with my parents. Okay. And it's funny because I just don't take my own advice sometimes, but I'll be like, I set very small goals for them. I'm talking about, especially when I used to do dressing, I'll be like, you know what? Just have him practice his shoes one time. That's it. Just one time. Just let him try to even put his foot in and you're good. Guess what? They're going to meet it, right? They met it. They feel successful. They can come back to parent meeting and be like, Mom, Michelle, I did it. I did this goal that you said to do. And so, going back on that, you're right. You're 100% right. Because whatever you can do for that day, continue to do so. And you can grow very slowly. It's more achievable. You're right. 100%. So I do that as well. I tell my parents that as well. But for spinning, there's different forms of spinning as well. Nice. So you can spin sitting up straight. You can do, counterclockwise and clockwise. Nice. But then we can also learn, show the body to spin on like a sideline and then the other way. Then we spin this again, clockwise, counterclockwise. We need it to be the same on both sides of the body. Don't just spin one way. Nice. Spin the other way. Exact same numbers if you can. A lot of kids also prefer one side versus the other. But I think it has a lot to do with reflexes. I feel like there's certain reflexes that they like this side better. Yeah. And sometimes spinning the other way challenges the body. So then that's a great way. So teaching them to spin both ways to kind of balance that body out, spinning on their back and spinning on their belly. So
rolling and at all. Yeah. The idea that you're changing your line of sight, you're changing. Yep. Wow. Okay. Yeah. You just opened that up a little bit further for me. Thank you so much. That's amazing. Okay.
It's interesting too, because stimming, I think, first of all, it's kind of a weird term because it's like an overarching term. About something that we don't do, so we call it stimming because somebody else is doing it. But if I did it, I wouldn't even think twice about it. But I think of like drumming. That's like just melodic stimming, right? Like if drumming wasn't socially acceptable, I'd be like, what? Why is this dude just banging on a bunch of stuff?
Dan's seen me in my car without my drums.
That's true.
With my air drums. Dan's seen me.
Mike goes with a permanent set of air drums everywhere he goes.
That's my stem. That's my stem.
So you meant
the sensory diet.
That's my sensory diet. I like
Yes.
that even better.
Daily.
yes, he has to feed that part of his brain, otherwise he'll just tick. He'll just rock. Yep. So you mentioned that you got into the ABA kind of side of things because you were in the OT and you saw the ABA thing side. I think, correct me if I'm using your words correctly. You're like, oh, this is interesting. This seems more flexible. Let me get involved in that. So I guess my two questions with that. One is when you were doing OT originally, were you working primarily with kids with autism or just all sorts of individuals? And then number two, what do you mean by that, or what sparked that interest? How did you feel like ABA would become useful in your OT practice?
Okay, so for OT, wait, what was the first question?
Did you
Sorry.
work primarily with people with autism, or did you work with all
yes.
sorts of?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yes, I did all pediatrics, and I feel like at the beginning in OT, I had a variety. Like it wasn't so much, or maybe maybe we just didn't have a lot of that info back in the day, and there wasn't a lot of that diagnosing just yet, so it didn't seem that way. But towards the end of it, I for sure started to. I did in home, so I wanted to go up into all these ABA clinics to do mainly that. I was like, hey, just keep me at the ABA clinics. Like I really want to work with a lot of kids on the spectrum, different ages and things like that to explore that. But the way I ran into, or I came into like jumping into the ABA part was one, I didn't really know about it. I think I had a client one time and they had, I think it was an RBT. I think that's what it was. And I was so interested in what she did. Like she was in home but she was following him to OT. It was just so cool to see that. And then little by little, I started asking. COVID happened. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not happy in my job. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not happy. Virtual, remote, all that was starting to become a thing. I started to look, into psychology. I don't know. I wanted to do something with behavior. I wanted to learn the body differently. And then I researched RBT stuff and all that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, ABA. I wonder what this is. But guess what? Never went back to school. That magic left. Then I went into a clinic that was multidisciplinary. So we had speech, OT, PT, ABA, and it was amazing. Like we had every Thursday we would get together and we would give presentations. So we would see, speech presentations, ABA presentations like that, learning about new things. And they would pay money to take us to go get CEUs with really like reflex, food therapy. I've done food therapy. I did food therapy. Yeah. I'm like, I feel like I've done it all. And so then we would teach others about it to promote it in their disciplines. And then again, I saw ABA there a little bit more. And then I was really into it, did some shadowing. And then I'm like, I want to do this. So I ended up doing it and I love it.
Shout out to you.
Shout out indeed. And this concludes part 1 of our interview with Michelle Vences. Please return for part 2 and
always analyze responsibly.
ABA on Tap is recorded live and unfiltered. We're done for today. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you next time.